Today we are going to walk through something that Buckingham Palace has allegedly kept sealed behind layers of protocol, legal maneuvering, and institutional silence for years. But the walls, it seems, are finally cracking. Palace insiders, people who were there, people who saw things, people who kept quiet out of loyalty to the crown, are breaking their silence. And what they are saying is devastating. What follows is not rumor, it is not gossip. It is a meticulous examination of the evidence, the inconsistencies, the contradictions, the impossible timelines, and the freshly leaked claims from inside Buckingham Palace itself that suggest Meghan Markle's pregnancies may not have been what they appeared to be. And the question that hangs over all of it like a guillotine blade: did Harry know? Cast your mind back to October 2018. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry arrive in Australia for their first major royal tour. And Meghan, glowing in a white dress, cradles a barely visible bump. The announcement had just been made. She was pregnant. The world was charmed. But then something happened that the mainstream media glossed over entirely, and that eagle-eyed observers have never forgotten. The bump moved, not in the way a baby moves inside a mother. No, the bump shifted position, visibly, dramatically, and in ways that defy human anatomy. In footage that has been viewed millions of times and analyzed frame by frame, Meghan's bump appeared to fold, collapse, and relocate on her body between appearances. In one clip, captured as she bent forward, the bump seemed to physically slide upward toward her ribcage before she adjusted it with her hand. Now, defenders will say this is simply the fabric of her clothing creating an optical illusion. Fair enough. Let's accept that as a possibility. But let's also acknowledge something else. This was not a one-time occurrence. Across dozens of public appearances throughout her pregnancy with Archie, the size, shape, and position of Meghan's bump changed with a frequency that made observers, including medical professionals who commented anonymously at the time, raise serious questions. On one Tuesday, she appeared to be roughly 5 months pregnant. By Thursday of that same week, she appeared to be 8 months along. By the following Monday, the bump had receded again. Pregnancy does not work this way. Barbies do not shrink. The uterus does not deflate and reinflate based on one's outfit choices. And yet no journalist with mainstream credentials dared to ask the obvious question, because to ask it would be career suicide. To even hint at it would invoke accusations of racism, misogyny, and conspiracy theorizing. But here is the thing about the truth: it doesn't care about your career. On May 6, 2019, Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor was reportedly born. And I use the word reportedly deliberately because almost nothing about this birth followed any established royal protocol, or frankly any established logic. For centuries, literally centuries, royal births have been subject to verification. This tradition exists not because of cruelty or invasiveness, but because the line of succession to the British throne is a constitutional matter. It is a matter of state. The identity and legitimacy of royal children is not a private family affair. It is a legal and governmental concern. Every senior royal birth in modern history has been attended by officials, verified by physicians connected to the royal household, and documented in ways that leave no room for doubt. Princess Diana gave birth in the Lindo wing of St Mary's Hospital, as did Catherine, Princess of Wales, for all 3 of her children. The world saw Kate walk out of that hospital, visibly postpartum, holding her newborn child, mere hours after delivery. Meghan Markle did none of this. Instead, the Sussexes announced after the fact that Meghan had given birth at Portland Hospital. Or was it at home? The story shifted. Initial reports suggested a home birth at Frogmore Cottage. Then it was confirmed days later that the birth had actually occurred at Portland Hospital in central London. The convoy that reportedly transporting Meghan to the hospital in the early hours of the morning was never confirmed by independent witnesses, and never verified by the hospital itself in any public statement. When Meghan finally appeared with the baby, in a carefully staged photo call inside Windsor Castle, not outside a hospital, she showed no visible signs of having given birth approximately 48 hours earlier. No swelling, no exhaustion. Postpartum physical indicators whatsoever. She stood in high heels, fully made up, beaming, holding a baby that was swaddled so completely that virtually no identifying features were visible. And here is a detail that has haunted observers ever since. When asked about the baby during that photo call, Prince Harry, the father, said something extraordinary. He said the baby's appearance has changed over the last 2 weeks. Over the last 2 weeks, the baby was supposed to be 2 days old. Not 2 weeks, 2 days. Now supporters have argued that Harry simply misspoke, that he was a nervous new father fumbling with words, and perhaps that's true. But in the context of everything else, the shifting bump, the hidden birth, the refusal of protocol, the impossible timeline, that slip of the tongue begins to sound less like a nervous mistake and more like a man momentarily forgetting which version of the story he was supposed to tell. If the circumstances surrounding Archie's birth were suspicious, the birth of Lilibet Diana on June 4, 2021 was, if possible, even more opaque. By this time, Harry and Meghan had left the royal family. They had relocated to Montecito, California. They had done the opera interview. They had declared war on the institution. And they were, by every measure, operating as independent celebrities rather than working royals. Lilibet's birth was announced via press release. There were no independent photographs for weeks. When an image was finally released, their Christmas card that year, it was a stylized, distant, artistically filtered photograph that revealed almost nothing. No birth certificate was made public initially. No hospital made a confirming statement. No physician attached their name to the delivery in any public forum. The child existed, ostensibly, because Meghan and Harry said she did, and here is where the latest developments become critical. According to multiple sources now emerging from within the palace structure, sources connected to staff who served the Sussexes during their time as working royals, Buckingham Palace has been conducting a quiet, internal review of documentation related to both births. This review, allegedly initiated as part of broader succession-related housekeeping, has reportedly uncovered inconsistencies that senior officials find deeply troubling. The nature of these inconsistencies has not been fully disclosed. But the fact that such a review is taking place at all tells you everything you need to know about the level of confidence, or rather, the lack thereof, that the institution has in the official narrative. Let us address the elephant in the room. The enormous, unmistakable, impossible to ignore elephant. Where are these children? Archie was born in 2019. Lilibet in 2021. As of today, they are 5 and 3 years old, respectively. And the world has seen them on a handful of occasions so controlled, so curated, and so deliberately obscured that they might as well be fictional characters. Now I want to be clear about something. Every parent has the right to protect their children's privacy. That is a sacred right, and I would never argue otherwise. But Meghan Markle is not a private person who accidentally stumbled into fame. She's a woman who did a multi-million-dollar deal with Netflix. A woman who sat down with Oprah Winfrey for a 2-hour globally televised interview. A woman who wrote a children's book. A woman who launched a podcast. A woman who has monetized every conceivable aspect of her personal life, her marriage, her mental health struggles, and her family conflicts. She has monetized everything except the children, and that is what doesn't add up. Because Meghan Markle, as we have come to understand her over 7 years of public life, does not leave money on the table. She does not miss an opportunity for publicity. She does not shy away from cameras. She does not turn down magazine covers. So why are the children invisible? If Meghan had carried these children, if she had given birth to them, if she had the photographs, the hospital records, the birth videos, the postpartum recovery journey, all of the content that would generate millions of views, millions of dollars, and unassailable proof of her motherhood, she would have used it. She would have released it. She would have sold it to the highest bidder or produced it herself for Netflix. The fact that she hasn't is not evidence of privacy. It is evidence of absence. Now we arrive at what may be the most consequential element of this entire saga, and it connects directly to the palace insider leaks that have emerged in recent weeks. There is an operation underway. It has been referred to in certain circles as Operation Thor. Its purpose, according to those familiar with its framework, is straightforward: bring Prince Harry back into the fold, rehabilitate him, restore him, and critically separate him publicly and permanently from Meghan Markle. The palace, according to these sources, has concluded that Harry is salvageable. He is the son of the king. He is the brother of the future king. He is a figure of genuine public affection in certain quarters, a military veteran, a man who, stripped of Meghan's influence, might yet be restored to something resembling his former self. But Meghan is not salvageable, not in the eyes of the institution, not in the eyes of the British public, whose opinion polls have been catastrophically clear, and if these latest allegations bear fruit, not in the eyes of the law. And this is where the surrogate allegations become not just tabloid fodder, but genuine strategic weaponry. Because if the palace possesses evidence, real, documented, verifiable evidence, that the pregnancies were fabricated, that surrogates were used and concealed, that the line of succession was potentially compromised by deliberate fraud, then that evidence is not just embarrassing. It is leverage. It is the kind of leverage that could compel Harry to cooperate with his family's wishes, to return. Separate, to submit, because the alternative, the public release of such evidence, the legal ramifications, the utter destruction of whatever remains of Meghan's reputation, would be annihilation. The question is whether Harry was complicit. Let me say this carefully because it matters. If Meghan Markle used surrogates to produce children that she then publicly claimed to have carried and delivered herself, there are only two possibilities regarding Prince Harry's involvement. Either he knew or he didn't. If he didn't know, if his own wife deceived him about something as fundamental as the biological origin of his children, then Harry is a victim of a kind of manipulation so profound, so psychologically violent, that it almost defies comprehension, and his family would be morally obligated to rescue him from it. But if he knew, if he participated, if he covered for her, if he stood beside her and lied to the world, lied to his own family, lied to the institution he was born to serve, then Harry is not a victim. He is a co-conspirator, and the consequences for him must be equally severe. Most observers who have followed this story closely believe the latter. They believe Harry knew. They believe it is simply impossible for a husband to be unaware that his wife is not pregnant. They believe that the coordinated secrecy, the violation of protocols, the refusal of medical verification, and the ongoing concealment of the children could not have been accomplished without his active participation. And if that is true, if both of them orchestrated this, then what they have done to those children, whoever those children are, wherever they came from, is a form of cruelty that will echo through those children's lives forever. Because one day those children will grow up, they will read the internet. They will see the theories, the evidence, the questions, and they will have to confront the possibility that their entire identity, their parentage, their birth story, their place in one of the most famous families in human history was a fabrication. That is not privacy. That is not protection. That is psychological abuse dressed in designer clothing. There is one final observation I want to make before we close, and it is perhaps the most damning of all. In the face of these allegations that have circulated for years, that have been discussed by millions of people, that have been the subject of books, documentaries, podcasts, and countless hours of analysis, Meghan Markle has never once produced definitive proof that she carried and delivered her children. Never. Not a single photograph from inside a delivery room. Not a single statement from a named attending physician. Not a single piece of hospital documentation made available to independent verification. Not a single postpartum image taken in the immediate aftermath of birth. Not a single ultrasound shared publicly. Nothing. She has produced nothing. And this is a woman who documented her entire life on social media before she became a royal. A woman who photographed her food, her dogs, her yoga poses, her legs on airplanes. A woman who curated every aspect of her public image with the precision of a military campaign. But pregnancy, birth, the most significant, most photographable, most documentable experiences of a woman's life. Silence. When the silence is louder than the accusation, you don't need a confession. You need only ears willing to listen. what we are witnessing may be the slow-motion unraveling of one of the most audacious deceptions in modern royal history. The palace insiders who are now speaking, carefully, strategically, and with the quiet authority of people who know they are protected, are not doing so by accident. Every leak is deliberate, every revelation is timed. Every piece of evidence that surfaces does so because someone, somewhere inside that ancient institution, has decided that the truth matters more than the silence. Whether Operation Thor succeeds in bringing Harry back remains to be seen. Whether Meghan can survive the weight of these allegations is another question entirely. The questions never went away, they only moved into the corridors of power. And now, palace insiders are beginning to break their silence about what really happened behind the closed doors of Frogmore Cottage and the high-security wings of hospitals that claim no record of a royal delivery. The Lilibet birth scandal has exploded into the public consciousness, and this time, the smoke is coming from inside the palace itself. We have to look at the patterns. Meghan Markle is a woman who lives for the lens. She is a woman who, by her own admission, finds power in telling her truth. She has shared her private thoughts, her tears, and even the intimate details of a reported miscarriage in the pages of the New York Times. She is someone who invited cameras into her home for a Netflix documentary to show the world how she makes tea and how she curates her life. Why then would a woman so obsessed with her own narrative, a woman so keen to monetize every breath she takes, become a ghost the moment she was supposed to be giving birth? If Meghan Markle were truly pregnant, if she had experienced the physical reality of bringing a future prince and princess into this world, she would have shouted it from the rooftops. We would have seen the sonograms in high definition. We would have had a 12-part docuseries on the sacred journey of motherhood. There would be birth photos, hospital room selfies, and every milestone leaked to the media for the highest possible price. Instead, we got shadows. We got a swaddled bundle that was never quite visible. We got a photo call in a hallway 2 days late, and then there is Harry. Prince Harry, a man who once seemed incapable of keeping a secret, has become the chief architect of this ambiguity. But even the best actors have their moments of weakness, their slips of the tongue that reveal the reality behind the role. Remember the birth of Archie. Remember Harry standing before the cameras, beaming with a nervous energy that felt less like joy and more like relief that a plan had been executed. He looked the world in the eye and said the baby had changed so much over the last 2 weeks. The baby was supposed to be 2 days old. A newborn's face doesn't undergo 2 weeks of developmental change in 48 hours. Harry had to have known. He was there, he walked the path with her. And if he stood by while a surrogate was used and the public was told a different story, then he is not just a husband. He is a co-conspirator in a fraud against the crown and the British people. The rumors of Operation Thor are growing louder by the day. Sources within the royal household suggest that King Charles and Prince William are no longer content to let the Sussexes dictate the narrative from their fortress in Montecito. The palace has allegedly found new evidence, documented inconsistencies in the medical filings for both Archie and Lilibet, that suggest the births did not occur as reported. If these children were born via surrogate, they are, by the laws of the British Constitution, ineligible for the line of succession. To place them there under false pretenses is not just a family lie, it is a legal bombshell. It is fraud on a grand historical scale, and the whisper in the halls of Windsor is that this evidence is being used as the ultimate leverage. The king wants his son back. He wants Harry away from the influence of the woman who has led him into this wilderness. Operation Thor is the mechanism to bring Harry home, but it requires one thing: the total collapse of the house of cards Meghan has built. It is a tragedy of the highest order. We are talking about 2 young children who have been used as pawns in a game of global PR. If the allegations are true, if Meghan used surrogates and then faked her own pregnancies to maintain her status and her royal mother brand, the mental abuse these children have suffered is incalculable. They have been hidden away, kept from their extended family, and turned into invisible assets for their parents' media deals. They have been injured for life by the secrecy and the manipulation. A mother who truly loves her children does not use them as weapons or as bargaining chips. She does not keep them in a state of perpetual mystery to maintain a sense of intrigue for her followers. The shame of it is breathtaking. I have never believed the official story. Not for a second. The logistics simply do not hold up to scrutiny. The shifting bumps, the refusal of the Queen's own doctors to attend the births, the bizarre announcements that came hours after the events had supposedly occurred, it all points to a carefully managed illusion. Meghan is a professional actress after all. She understands how to hit her marks. She knows how to wear the costume. But the problem with playing a role this big is that you eventually run out of script. You eventually have to produce the proof. And as the palace insiders begin to speak, as the leaks become a flood, the Duchess of Sussex is finding that her truth is no longer enough to protect her. Think about the sheer arrogance required to pull off a stunt like this. To think you could deceive a monarchy that has survived for a millennium. To think you could lie to the British public about the legitimacy of the line of succession. It is the height of narcissism. And yet, it fits the profile perfectly. From the moment she stepped onto the royal stage, Meghan Markle has treated the institution like a stepping stone. She wanted the title, she wanted the jewels, and she wanted the status, but she didn't want the reality. She didn't want the duty. And apparently she didn't want the physical toll of pregnancy, preferring instead to fabricate a version of it that she could control, edit, and sell. The marriage is, by all accounts, in a state of terminal decay. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex brand is a toxic asset. Harry is reportedly looking for an exit, a way to crawl back to the family he betrayed. But the price of his return will be high. He will have to answer for his part in this. He will have to explain why he allowed his wife to engage in what can only be described as a birth scandal of the century. Did he participate out of love, or was he a victim of the same mental abuse that is now being visited upon his children? Either way, the damage is done. The shame is permanent. There is a coldness to this story that should chill anyone who values the truth. It is the coldness of a woman who views her own family as a production department. Every word that comes out of that couple's mouth has been filtered through a layer of PR and deception. They are shameful people who have traded their integrity for a fleeting moment of celebrity. But celebrity is a fickle master. The cameras that Meghan loves so much are now being pointed at the cracks in her story. The palace, once her protector, is now the source of her greatest threat. They have the evidence. They have the testimonies of the staff who saw the moon bumps in the dressing rooms. They have the records from the clinics. And they are ready to let the world know that the children of Sussex were born not of a royal womb, but of a calculated plan to deceive the world. The scandal is exploding. There is no going back now. The Lilibet birth scandal isn't just a headline, it's the end of the road for Meghan Markle's royal aspirations. She thought she could rewrite the rules of the monarchy. She thought she could outact the king and his advisors. But in the end, the truth is the one thing she couldn't script. The children deserve the truth. The British people deserve the truth. And Harry deserves the reality of the life he chose. She is a merchant of her own life. So ask yourself this: if she had truly carried those children, if she had experienced the grueling, transformative, and visually undeniable journey of a royal pregnancy, would she have let that content go to waste? The Meghan Markle we know would have sold the exclusive rights to her sonograms to the highest bidder. She would have had a camera crew in the delivery room, capturing every tear and every contraction for a 10-part Netflix special. She would have leaked birth photos to the media with the speed of a professional publicist. The fact that she didn't isn't proof of a newfound desire for privacy. It is the ultimate red flag. You don't hide what you can sell unless what you're selling is a lie. The inconsistencies surrounding the birth of Archie were the first cracks in the dam. We were told of a hospital birth, then a home birth, then a secret convoy that no one saw. We were presented with a medical statement that lacked the signatures of the royal physicians, a move that broke centuries of constitutional protocol. But it was Harry's own mouth that provided the most damning evidence. When he stood there, fumbling through his lines, and claimed the baby had changed so much in 2 weeks when the child was supposedly 48 hours old, he wasn't just misspeaking. He was experiencing a glitch in the simulation. He was a man who had been living with a reality, a child born via surrogate weeks prior, and he momentarily forgot which script he was supposed to be reading for the public. Harry had to have known. You cannot live in a house with a woman for 9 months and not notice the absence of a biological pregnancy. If he stood by and allowed this charade to proceed, he is just as guilty of fraud against the crown as she is. But now the focus has shifted to Lilibet, and the stakes have become astronomical. The Lilibet birth scandal is not just about a missing birth certificate or a lack of photos. It is about the leaked evidence that palace insiders are now beginning to whisper about. According to these sources, the palace has obtained documentation that contradicts the official narrative of the birth in California. There are reports of staff members who worked for the Sussexes in Montecito who have finally broken their silence, describing a household where the physical reality of a pregnancy was nowhere to be found. They speak of moon bumps found in laundry baskets and a sudden miraculous appearance of a child that no one saw being carried. This is the evidence that Buckingham Palace has supposedly been sitting on, waiting for the right moment to deploy. And that moment, it seems, is now. This brings us to Operation Thor. There is a growing sense that the British monarchy is moving into a new phase of conflict management. The goal is no longer to contain the Sussexes, but to dismantle the partnership. The palace knows that Harry is a son of the king, a man who, despite his betrayals, remains a biological part of the family. The strategy appears to be a surgical separation. By bringing the surrogate evidence to light, the palace creates a pathway for Harry to return, provided he leaves the architect of the deception behind. It is a brutal, cold-blooded maneuver, but it is one born of necessity. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex's marriage is reportedly over in all but name, a hollowed-out business arrangement held together by NDAs and mutual destruction. If Harry is to be brought back, the Meghan problem must be solved once and for all, and the surrogate bombshell is the silver bullet. The tragedy in all of this, the part that is truly shameful, is the impact on the children. If Archie and Lilibet were born via surrogates and their parents lied about it to secure their places in the line of succession, then those children have been used as tools of statecraft and branding. They have been injured for life by a level of mental abuse and manipulation that is staggering to contemplate. To be raised in a house of secrets, where your very birth is a matter of global suspicion and your parents' marriage is a battlefield, is a heavy burden for any child to carry. Meghan and Harry have played a high-stakes game of poker with their children's identities, and as the cards are turned over, it is the children who will pay the price. I never believed she was pregnant. And the more the palace insiders speak, the more that skepticism indicated. The sick couple, as many are now calling them, have traded the truth for a crown of lies, and the weight of it is finally pulling them under. We must look at the cold, hard facts of British law. To be in the line of succession, one must be born of the body. This is not a suggestion, it is a legal requirement. If a surrogate was used, those children have no legal right to their titles or their place in the hierarchy of the British state. By concealing this, Meghan and Harry haven't just lied to their family, they have committed a fraud against the Constitution of the United Kingdom. This is why the palace's new evidence is so dangerous for the Sussexes. It's not just about a scandal, it's about the legal grounds for their total removal from royal life. The Duke and Duchess thought they were bigger than the institution. They thought they could use the methods of Hollywood to subvert the traditions of a 1,000-year-old monarchy. But the palace is an institution that thinks in centuries, not seasons. They have been patient, they have been quiet, and now they are being lethal. The narrative of Meghan as a victim of the palace machinery is crumbling. In its place is the image of a woman who orchestrated a monumental deception, thinking she could hide the truth behind a wall of PR and accusations of bullying. But you cannot bully the truth into disappearing. You cannot litigate a biological reality out of existence. Every time she stepped out with a bump that seemed to change shape, every time she refused to allow the Queen's physicians to verify a birth, she was leaving a trail of breadcrumbs that has now led the palace straight to her door. The staff leaks are the final nail in the coffin. These are the people who saw her every day, who handled her clothes, who managed her schedule, and who knew the truth that the public only suspected. Their silence was bought with contracts and loyalty, but both of those have a breaking point. As Operation Thor continues to unfold, the world is watching to see if Harry will take the bait. Will he sacrifice the woman who led him into this mess to save his own standing? Or will he go down with the ship, tethered to a lie that has alienated him from everyone he once loved? The palace insiders are clear. The marriage is a shell, and the truth about the births is the detonator that will blow it apart. The scandal is no longer fringe theory. It is the central crisis of the Sussex brand. Meghan Markle's house of cards was built on a foundation of her truth, but she is learning the hard way that her truth is not the same thing as the actual truth. The evidence is found. The witnesses are talking. In the age of the smartphone, in the era of the influencer, Meghan Markle is a woman who has never met a camera she didn't want to perform for. She is someone who documented her every meal on her blog, her every vacation on Instagram, and her every grievance on Netflix. And yet, when it came to the most monumental events a woman can undergo, the birth of two royal heirs, the cameras went dark. If Meghan Markle were actually pregnant, she would have used that journey as the ultimate branding tool. You would have seen the morning sickness diaries, the nursery tour, the natural birth plan, and the glowing postpartum recovery photos. She would have sold those images to Vogue or People magazine for millions. Instead, we were given grainy, distant shots, strangely timed announcements, and a total blackout of medical verification. Why? Because you cannot photograph a reality that doesn't exist. You cannot document a pregnancy that is being worn like a costume. The skepticism didn't start in a vacuum. It started with the shifting bump. Throughout 2018 and 2019, observers noticed something that defies the laws of biology. Meghan's pregnant stomach appeared to possess a mind of its own. It would be large in the morning and small in the evening. It would sit near her chest one day and near her hips the next. Most infamously, it appeared to literally fold and pop when she knelt down, making a sound and a shape that suggested foam and fabric rather than flesh and bone. At the time, anyone who pointed this out was branded a lunatic. But now, the palace insiders are confirming what our eyes told us years ago. Leaks from the staff at Frogmore Cottage suggest that prosthetic management was a daily part of the Duchess's routine. They speak of discarded materials, of specialized garments, and of a woman who was playing the role of a mother-to-be with the clinical detachment of a Hollywood actress on set. Then came the birth of Archie, an event shrouded in such bizarre secrecy that it felt more like a covert military operation than a royal delivery. The official announcement was a mess of contradictions. The public was told she was in labor hours after she had supposedly already given birth. The royal physicians were sidelined, replaced by a private team that refused to sign the traditional birth bulletin. And then the smoking gun, Prince Harry's own words. Standing in the stables at Windsor, a man who looked like he was vibrating with the stress of a massive lie. He told the press that the baby had changed so much over the last 2 weeks. A newborn baby 2 days old does not change over the course of 2 weeks. Harry knew the truth. He had to have known. He was living the lie right alongside her, watching as the surrogate's child was brought in to play the part of the royal heir. If he participated in this, he has committed a betrayal against his father and his country that is beyond forgiveness. The latest intelligence suggests that this evidence is now the centerpiece of Operation Thor. The palace, led by the king's most trusted advisors, is allegedly using this surrogate bombshell to force a resolution to the Sussex problem. The marriage between Harry and Meghan is, by all accounts, a hollowed-out ruin, a toxic partnership held together by mutual secrets. But the secrets are no longer safe. The palace reportedly has the names of the surrogates, the non-disclosure agreements signed in California, and the medical records that show Meghan Markle was never a patient at the hospitals where she claimed to give birth. This is the leverage required to bring Harry back, to tell him that the game is up, the fraud is exposed, and his only hope for a future is to return to London and leave the architect of this scandal behind in Montecito. The mental abuse inherent in this situation is staggering. We are talking about 2 children, Archie and Lilibet, who have been brought into this world under a cloud of deception. If they were born via surrogate and their parents lied to the world about it, they have been denied their true history and used as props in a global PR war. Meghan and Harry have injured these children for life by placing them at the center of a constitutional fraud. They have treated human beings like assets to be managed and manipulated. It is a shameful display of narcissism. A mother who truly loved her children would not hide them away or use their births as a way to break the internet or secure a multi-million-dollar media deal. She would celebrate them. She would show them to the world with pride. The fact that Meghan hasn't done that is the most damning indictment of her character. Let's be clear about the stakes. The British monarchy relies on the integrity of the line of succession. It is the thread that holds the entire institution together. By allegedly faking these pregnancies and using surrogates without following the legal requirements for royal births, Meghan and Harry have attacked the very foundation of the crown. This isn't just a celebrity scandal, it is a legal crisis. If the children were not born of the body of the Duchess, they have no right to be called prince or princess. They have no right to the throne. By claiming otherwise, the Sussexes have committed a fraud that could have lasting implications for the stability of the monarchy. This is why the palace is finally breaking its silence. This is why the insiders are leaking the truth. They realize that the survival of the institution depends on exposing the lie. I have never believed a single word that comes out of that couple's mouths. From the Oprah interview to the Netflix series, everything has been a curated performance designed to elicit sympathy and generate cash. But the birth fraud is the one lie they can't recover from. You can spin a family argument, you can rewrite the history of a palace dispute, but you cannot rewrite biology. The evidence is mounting, and it points to a woman who was so desperate for status and so averse to the reality of royal duty that she faked the most sacred experience a woman can have. She thought she was smarter than the system. She thought she could use her acting skills to subvert 1,000 years of tradition, but the Duchess of Deception has run out of time. The palace has the evidence, the staff are talking, the medical inconsistencies are being laid bare, and Prince Harry, the man who stood by and watched it happen, is now facing the ultimate choice: stay with the woman who orchestrated the fraud or return to the family he betrayed. The marriage is over, the scandal is exploding, and the truth about Archie and Lilibet's births is finally coming to light. It is a dark, shameful chapter in royal history, but it is a chapter that must be read. Pregnancy is a physical reality that leaves a trail. Medical records, attending physicians, physical transformations, and the unavoidable scrutiny of the public eye. For a member of the royal family, this is doubled. The line of succession is not a private family tree, it is a constitutional document. Yet with Meghan Markle, every established rule of royal birth was systematically dismantled. The surrogate bombshell isn't just a tabloid theory anymore. It is the focal point of a palace investigation that has reportedly uncovered inconsistencies that cannot be explained away as privacy. If Meghan Markle were truly pregnant, if she had experienced the raw, beautiful reality of carrying those children herself, she would have used every second of it to bolster her brand. She would have been the face of maternity wellness, the cover star of every parenting magazine, and the star of a multi-part documentary detailing her sacred journey. Instead, she gave us silence, shadows, and a shifting bump that seemed to defy the laws of gravity and anatomy. Witnesses from within the royal household have reportedly come forward with accounts that are as shocking as they are consistent. They describe a duchess who was remarkably agile for a woman in her final trimester, a woman who could squat in high heels, with a supposedly 9-month bump, without a hint of strain or physical discomfort. They describe prosthetic devices discovered by staff, and a birth plan for Archie that bypassed every royal physician in favor of a secretive team that left no paper trail with the crown. The shifting size of her bump, caught on camera dozens of times, was not an optical illusion. It was a failure of the costume. One day she appeared nearly ready to deliver, the next she was remarkably slender. This isn't how biology works, this is how a stage production works. And the palace now allegedly has the evidence to prove that the births were a carefully managed illusion designed to ensure the children's titles while avoiding the physical reality of pregnancy. And then we have Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, a man who was once the heart of the British monarchy, has spent the last few years as a supporting actor in Meghan's drama, but even he couldn't keep the script straight. We all remember that bizarre interview following Archie's supposed birth, where Harry, looking visibly rattled, claimed the baby had changed so much in the last 2 weeks. At the time, the child was meant to be 2 days old. You cannot hide the truth forever. It leaks out in the moments when you forget your lines. Harry had to have known. There is no world in which a husband is unaware that his wife is faking a pregnancy. If he participated in this, if he stood by and allowed a surrogate's child to be presented as a child of the body to the British public and the Queen, he has committed a constitutional crime. He has defrauded the throne he was born to protect. The latest reports suggest that this evidence is being used as the primary lever in Operation Thor. This is the internal palace strategy to bring Harry back into the fold, and crucially, to separate him from Meghan Markle once and for all. The marriage is widely reported to be in a state of total collapse, a victim of the very toxicity the couple tried to project onto others. The palace insiders suggest that the King and the Prince of Wales are ready to offer Harry a way out, but only if he admits to the deception. The surrogate evidence is the silver bullet. It provides the legal and moral grounds to strip Meghan of her influence and her standing. If the pregnancies were faked, the Duchess has no leg to stand on. She becomes not a royal mother, but a global fraudster. The most heartbreaking aspect of this entire scandal is the mental abuse visited upon the children. Archie and Lilibet are not characters in a Netflix series. They are real children who have been used as pawns in a narcissistic game of status and power. To hide children away, to use their births as a weapon against a grieving queen, and to potentially lie to them about their own biological origins is a level of cruelty that is difficult to fathom. They have been injured for life by the secrecy. A mother who truly cared for her children would not use their existence as a bargaining chip for security or media deals. She would not shroud their lives in such mystery that the entire world questions their very legitimacy. The shame of this couple is bottomless. I have never believed she was pregnant, and every new piece of evidence confirms that my skepticism was well-founded. The Lilibet birth scandal is the tipping point. The palace has allegedly found the records from the California clinics, the NDAs signed by the real biological mothers, and the logs of the private security teams who handled the secret transfers. The house of cards is falling. Meghan Markle thought she could out-attack the British monarchy, but she forgot that the palace has been playing this game for 1,000 years. They have the archives, they have the witnesses, and they have the truth. Every word that has come out of the Sussexes' mouths in the last 4 years, the claims of racism, the allegations of neglect, the truth told to opera, it was all a smoke screen to hide the ultimate deception. The palace insiders are no longer protecting them. The evidence of the surrogate bombshell is being prepared for the light of day. Harry is being forced to choose between his family and the lie he helped build. And Meghan is finding that no amount of PR or celebrity friends can protect her from a biological truth. The fraud is exploding, the marriage is over, and the shame is permanent. They are a couple who traded their souls for a spotlight, and now that spotlight is revealing every crack in their story. Yet when it came to the most verifiable and significant events of her life, the pregnancies and births of 2 royal heirs, the cameras were suddenly nowhere to be found. If Meghan Markle were truly pregnant, she would have monetized that experience with the precision of a CEO. We would have seen the sonograms, the nursery prep, and the beautiful, raw journey of motherhood documented for a multi-million-dollar Netflix special. Instead, we were given shadows, secrecy, and a series of bumps that seemed to change shape and size with the frequency of a stage prop. The physical evidence has been hiding in plain sight for years. Observers have long pointed to the footage where Meghan's pregnant belly appeared to fold, shift, and even pop as she moved. In one famous clip, the bump seemed to drop toward her knees before miraculously relocating to her ribcage as she stood up. Doctors who have viewed the footage anonymously have noted that the physics of her movement did not align with the weight and distribution of a human fetus. But the gaslighting was relentless. To question the bump was to be labeled a hater. Now, however, the palace insiders are providing the context for those anomalies. Leaked reports from former staff suggest that Operation Moonbump was a reality behind the scenes, a coordinated effort to maintain the appearance of a pregnancy that was actually occurring elsewhere, carried by women whose identities were protected by ironclad non-disclosure agreements and the Sussexes' private security. The birth of Archie was the first major glitch in the Matrix. The Sussexes bypassed every royal tradition, refusing the Queen's own medical team, and instead opting for a secret birth that no one could verify. The announcement came hours after the child had supposedly been born, and the traditional bulletin remained unsigned by the royal doctors. But it was Prince Harry who delivered the most damning slip of the tongue. In his first interview as a father, his eyes darting with the stress of a man keeping a massive secret, he claimed the baby had changed so much over the last 2 weeks. At that moment, the child was officially 2 days old. Harry knew, he had to have known. You cannot live with a woman and not know if she is biologically pregnant. If he stood by and allowed this fraud to be perpetrated against his grandmother, the Queen, and the British public, then he is a co-conspirator in a criminal deception. Now, the focus has shifted to the Lilibet birth scandal. And the stakes are even higher. The palace has allegedly unearthed documentation from California that contradicts the Sussexes' version of events. There are reports of hospital records that do not match the official timeline and testimonies from medical staff who claim the Duchess was never a patient in the delivery ward. This evidence is reportedly the cornerstone of Operation Thor, the palace's strategic move to separate Prince Harry from Meghan. The goal is clear: bring the king's son home, but only after exposing the woman who orchestrated the lie. The marriage is said to be in its final death throes, a union built on a foundation of shared secrets that are now being exposed to the light of day. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex brand is a house of cards, and the wind is starting to blow. The most tragic part of this entire saga is not the loss of titles or the destruction of a brand. It is the mental abuse visited upon the children. Archie and Lilibet are human beings, not props for a media empire. If they were born via surrogate and their parents lied to the world about it, they have been injured for life by a level of deception that is staggering. They have been hidden away, kept from their heritage, and used as bargaining chips in a global game of PR. A mother who truly loved her children would not shroud their very existence in such mystery that the world is forced to question their legitimacy. She would not use their births as a way to break the internet or secure a streaming deal. The shame of this couple is bottomless. I never believed she was pregnant, and every new piece of evidence confirms that she has traded the truth for a crown of lies. The legal implications are enormous. According to the British Constitution, a child must be born of the body to inherit a place in the line of succession. If a surrogate was used, and if that fact was concealed, then a fraud has been committed against the state. This is why the palace's discovery of new evidence is so explosive. It isn't just a family dispute. It is a legal crisis that could lead to the total removal of the Sussexes from the royal record. Meghan Markle thought she could outact a 1,000-year-old monarchy, but she forgot that the palace has the archives, the resources, and the witnesses to verify the truth. Every staff member who saw the prosthetic bumps, every medic who was told to look the other way, and every official who was lied to is now a potential witness against her. The Duchess of Deception is running out of options. The palace insiders are no longer protecting the couple. The surrogate bombshell is about to drop, and the fallout will be global. Harry is being forced to choose: stay with the lie or return to the truth. Meghan is finding that no amount of Hollywood PR or celebrity endorsements can rewrite the biological reality of her life. If she had truly given birth, if she had the scars and the stories and the raw maternal proof, she would have monetized it instantly. We would have seen the 4K sonograms, the intimate hospital footage, and the miracle of life documented for a global audience. The fact that she hid away isn't evidence of a desire for privacy. It is evidence of a desperate need to hide the strings on the puppet. The physical anomalies were the first cracks in the facade. For 9 months during her first pregnancy, the world watched as Meghan's stomach performed feats of magic. We saw a bump that appeared to be square in some photographs and perfectly round in others. We saw footage where the bump visibly wobbled and swayed, independent of her body's movements. Most notoriously, we saw the Duchess squatting in 4-inch heels with the agility of an Olympic athlete while supposedly 8 months pregnant. A feat that any woman who has actually carried a child knows is an anatomical impossibility. But the palace machinery, fearful of the racism and bullying labels Meghan wielded like a shield, told the staff to stay silent. That silence has ended. Former palace aides are now reportedly describing a household where the pregnancy was a logistical operation involving specialized garments and a rotating cast of prosthetic bumps, designed to match a timeline that was being managed by a PR firm, not a doctor. Then came the births themselves, events that broke every constitutional requirement for royal succession. For centuries, the legitimacy of an heir has been verified by the presence of officials and the testimony of the Queen's physicians. Meghan and Harry swept all of that aside, claiming a right to private births that left no verifiable trail. The birth of Archie was a comedy of errors, with announcements coming at the wrong times and medical bulletins missing the essential signatures. But the most damning evidence came from Prince Harry himself. In his post-birth interview, he looked like a man trapped in a burning building, his eyes darting as he claimed the baby had changed over the last 2 weeks. A newborn does not change over 2 weeks in the first 48 hours of life. Harry was reciting a script he hadn't fully memorized, a script meant to cover for a surrogate who had delivered the child weeks earlier. He knew, he had to have known. And by standing by his wife, he turned a family lie into a constitutional crime. The situation with Lilibet is even more opaque. Born in California, far from the reach of the British state, her birth was announced with the clinical detachment of a corporate merger. No hospital records were ever verified, and no independent photos were released for months. But the palace has reportedly found new evidence in the form of medical logs and security manifests from the clinics the Sussexes frequented in secret. This evidence is the centerpiece of Operation Thor, a strategic initiative to bring Prince Harry back to the UK by exposing the deception that has defined his marriage. The insiders suggest that the king is ready to move, and the leverage is the surrogate bombshell. If it is proven that the children were not born of the body of the Duchess, they lose everything: their titles, their place in the succession, and their legitimacy. The marriage is reportedly a ruin, a toxic arrangement held together by the mutual fear of exposure. The true victims of this shameful charade are the children. Archie and Lilibet are being raised in a vacuum of truth, used as high-value assets in a war of egos. If they were born via surrogates and their parents faked the pregnancies to secure their royal status, they have been injured for life by a level of mental abuse that is difficult to comprehend. To be a secret, to be a prop, and to be a part of a global fraud is a heavy burden for a child. A mother who loved her children would not use their very entry into this world as a way to get back at her in-laws or secure a multi-million-dollar media deal. She would not shroud their lives in such mystery that their identity becomes a matter of public debate. The shame of Meghan and Harry is that they put their brand above the well-being of their own offspring.